Good morning, good morning, good morning. What's going on, guys? Hey, good morning, Jose. Good morning, El Lobo. ¿Qué pasa with the markets? They won't shut up. I mean, that was a hell of a day that we had intraday. That I don't know what that flush was. I know that there was someone out there, probably about two or three people that caught that drop that we had yesterday intraday, where it literally just dropped 2 or 3 points within a matter of seconds. I heard my phone go off. I looked at it. I was like, "What the hell just happened out of nowhere?" While I was eating yesterday. So that was a hell of a drop. But I don't think it's anything to pretty much kind of just kill the market yet. I don't think we're done quite yet. The biggest, pretty much, catalyst for this market more so is going to be after hours when we have Nvidia earnings. I think that is pretty much going to be the biggest catalyst, in which case I could potentially see that being, that moving catalyst to pretty much finish this rally. That's pretty much what I'm looking at Nvidia doing, because if Nvidia has blowout earnings, then of course we know that the semis are entirely as a sector are going to rally, and then that would entirely likely push the tech sector as a whole right in towards our, pretty much, I want to say, our downtrend resistance. As you see, I have a little bit of a falling wedge action here on SPY weekly. All right. By the way, good morning, Cass. I saw that Sig ended up posting something about the fact that it didn't come from Russia. So yeah, I didn't know it was pretty much a Ukraine missile, but that was an interesting fact that now I know that. I mean, we'll see how it plays out. I don't think that we're gonna get necessarily news within the next one. I want to say what 48 hours here just yet on that. It could end up being the downfall for when the market ends up hitting this downtrend resistance. But do I think that's going to pretty much play a factor in terms of this market getting its next leg higher to finish this overall rally? That I will say I don't think it's going to play any kind of factor in it. I mean, it was a healthy little, I want to say, dip that you want to say, a little bit of a retracement pullback yesterday. That news, that headline ended up causing, which we were due for a pullback. I think everyone was looking for a pullback off of yesterday's price action going into the morning. We all wanted a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a pullback. I think that was exactly what the market needed. They usually say TA, no, news usually follows TA more so than TA follows news, right? So the fact that we ended up getting that breather, that little intraday pullback, I think that was necessary for the market to pretty much digest the overall uptrend that we've had so far, and then set us up for that last impulse up into our resistance. All right. So let's see. I mean, again, Nvidia I think is the biggest wild card. We could particularly have a red day overall, entirely all day today, and that would literally just be setting the stage for Nvidia to prop us right back up tomorrow. And what would be the ultimate shit show, basically, that the market makers could do for us, right? It will basically be to keep us within a range, keep us in the red territory here today, and then the ultimate, say, FU tomorrow will say, you know what, on the back end of the video earnings, let's just gap everything up into resistance. And now everyone's going to pretty much be chasing the rally on the back end of its end stage. And then guess what? Come next day, come on what, Friday, we're all going to get shot right back down. That would be the ultimate, say, you know what, let me just kill all the bulls here. You chase, and then guess what? I'll slap you right back down on Friday. And that would pretty much be the end stage of this overall uptrend we've had since we staged a little bit of a miniature bottom on October 10th. All right. That's pretty much what I can see end up happening. And then we would all particularly miss the move to the upside just because of NVIDIA's earnings. All right. Let's get into some different things though. Like I mentioned, I was gonna pretty much try and get into the SPY analysis. What is my theory here, basically going into that last impulse up that I'm watching. But I was talking about my support levels yesterday. Nothing has actually changed about my support levels more so. I'm still watching 394.13, and below that then I'm watching 390.15, which is pretty much along my support level of reaching towards that 20 EMA. If we do end up getting a pretty much a breakdown here today, that would be my lower end of the target towards that 390 mark. Otherwise, you're looking to reclaim back over the 100-day EMA off of the weekly, sitting at 399.33, and you're looking for a break above 403.71, which would then set us up for my next leg of resistance, roughly between this 405 half to 406 that we can wick. I do believe that is pretty much a very pivotal level of resistance that I'm going to be watching. and then the overshoot to our downtrend resistance that everyone has pretty much marked on their charts. I think that's what everyone's looking at. You turn on the news with Bloomberg, CNBC, everyone is watching particularly that overall downtrend off of this weekly. As you can see, we've hit multiple times since our peak from the beginning of the year, and that will push us right in close enough to that 411 mark on SPY, and everyone is expecting that to be our downfall. So that's particularly where I'm a little bit more concerned to say, you know what, everyone watching the same thing, is that ideally going to play out for everyone to be able to short at 411, like everyone's looking at for that to be the downtrend resistance. Do I believe it's going to end up happening? I have my doubts about the fact that everyone's going to be able to time that top at 411 right into that downtrend resistance, and we're all going to end up being able to get into puts and live happily ever after and be millionaires. I don't think the market's going to pretty much be that kind to us. Ideally, my game plan is to get into puts once we get close enough towards that 406 mark. That's more so the resistance that I'm watching. That's also lining up with just getting that break over that 50-day EMA off of the weekly. So that's where I'm going to look to pretty much start my position. That way, for any reason the market wants to sell us short, or maybe that move to 411 ends up happening outside of market hours, regular market hours, then that'll pretty much be a case that, you know what, I already secured my position for the downside, and I can pretty much live with that. Because more than likely, and we've seen it a number of times where a lot of the price action, especially the price action that we want to be a part of, we ended up not seeing it because it ends up happening outside of regular market hours. All right. So that's what I'm gonna look for. That's particularly my game plan, is getting puts close to 406. But that'll be where I start to get my starter position, because I'm not gonna load up entirely full. If we all get that dream and we push the 411 on SPY into the downtrend resistance and we get our rejection for the next leg to the downside. All right. But that will basically be your top end of the range here as we go into Nvidia's earnings. And relatively today, you're looking at 411 to the downtrend resistance. Vice versa, support level that I'm watching, if we kind of get any kind of meltdown, or the bottom end of this range here more so, I'm watching that 390.15, which is our support at the 20-day EMA off of the weekly. All right. So that's just giving you the top end and the bottom end of that range particularly. All right. Now let's get into some different names here. I do know that TGT actually had earnings this morning. That was rather disgusting. So I should end up kind of looking at that chart, but that was a hell of a breakdown that we had. Now, the thing that actually caught me a little bit off guard here, looking at Target, and if I probably looked at the chart before the earnings, I likely would have said that this should have ended up pretty much getting a reversal. Not necessarily a reversal, but a continuation into that gap fill. But that was just a disgusting earnings that they had. They ended up missing their estimates. They ended up guiding down towards the holiday season. So that is exactly why you see the stock down as much as it is, down over 15% now. But you did have an inverted head and shoulders action that took place off of the daily. That inverted head and shoulders basically took you right into that 200-day EMA as you pushed into some pretty pivotal resistance at one close enough to 180, right? And then we saw that abysmal earnings. So now that the fact that we basically broke that overall pattern as it already played out potentially, now we're basically breaking our uptrend. We're going to come right back down as we're filling a gap to the downside here. We're sitting right at that gap fill at 146.68. And then below that, then I will particularly be watching for this to come down towards 144 is my next level to the downside. All right. So I will be targeting 144 if and when we see the market start to reverse. That'll likely be where that would potentially aid this more so to the downside. But right now, it should, after all the downfall that it had, about 15, close to 16% now, I do believe that we should get the bounce off of the gap fill, and resistance that you're watching here right now is 155.34 for any kind of meaningful bounce, any kind of dead cat bounce that we have, more so to say. It should end up hitting 155.34 as a resistance before that next leg to the downside. All right. TGT Retaloo popping in the pre-market, yeah, it was disgusting. Although when I didn't realize you actually mentioned TGT, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad I covered the chart. It was just disgusting. The fact that they missed everything, but I believe what more so ended up causing the fact that it's down 15% as opposed to say what, like 8 to 10%, was the fact that they guided down towards going into the holiday season. That was rather disgusting. All right. AA, what do I think about Netflix? You got some calls 2 weeks out. Let's take a peep. Let's see what's going on with Netflix. Netflix has been a monster. I mean, the fact that it's been showing such strong relative strength even on red days more so, has just been monstrous. Now, do I believe that you probably could have got a little bit of a better entry on it? Ideally, you could have. I mean, depends on what your entry point was, though. But support I have is 306.35. Below that is 302 half. Those are pretty much your two potential dip buy entries, right? Is that 306.35 and then 302 half is what I have as the next downside potential support test. All right. But upside targets, as you said that you're holding calls, would be 317.20 and then next PT would basically be 323.84, and you can call that 324 as you get the continuation into the gap fill. Now, what is my concern is pretty much essentially what I've been kind of trying to indicate since I've been starting my life more so is that you may not get that full on upside towards those PTs more so until we end up likely pushing or gapping up overnight off of Nvidia earnings. That is my major concern. I don't think the market's going to be so kind to give us a beautiful little trend day, beautiful rally here today before we hear what Nvidia has to say on their earnings. And they set pretty much the table for the market to continue this rally. That's my major concern. So that's why I'm a little bit hesitant to pretty much say that, you know what, you're likely going to see a straight up continuation of breaking over yesterday's highs. I'm a little bit hesitant to say that. I do believe that we're going to likely see a little bit more of some red action as you see futures are pretty much regressing right now as we speak. I'm more so in the camp that we continue to stay red. We may make an attempt to go green at some point, like maybe this morning we attempt a recovery, but I don't expect us to break over yesterday's highs to see a beautiful trend day where you see these upside targets rather hit until on the back end of Nvidia's earnings, where that will be likely be what props up the market to end stage of this rally. All right. But those are my PTs nonetheless. 317, 324. Those are pretty much your main numbers that you're watching for the upside. All right. So that's pretty much looking at Netflix. I could probably go down some names. Thomas, can I look? Can I do Meta or Rivian? I'll take a peep at both of them. What are my thoughts on Rumble? Um, if you could be more specific on that, Jose, I could probably give you a better answer on that. Let's take a look in the meantime, though, at Meta. Let's see what's going on with Meta. All right, so Meta's getting a nice little dip this morning off of the red price action. I actually have a support. I was hoping for a better dip buy entry on Meta. It didn't particularly come, but I was actually looking to see if we would end up retesting that 20-day EMA. Although we actually curled up beautifully, making higher highs from since last week Thursday. We were basically making higher highs, and we still have that beautiful continuation. If I were to say potentially where your support test is, if we don't come all the way back down towards the 20-day EMA, I'll be looking towards 113.67. 113.67 is that level that I'd be watching for your support, potentially a dip buy. If you can hold 113.67 on Meta, then of course you're going to look to reclaim over 116.42, and your PTs falling to the upside here is going to be sitting at 120.92 and then 123.05 as you get the further continuation into the gap fill, similar to how Netflix looks with its gap fill as well. All right, so that'll be another one. I think I mentioned as well, probably about a few days back already as well. Those names, especially that have been beating up Netflix, Meta, and Amazon, those three names, pretty much especially, have been beaten up so much that they've been a very big benefit to this overall rally. So they all pretty much relatively have larger gap fills, more so that actually need to be filled to the upside, and that's why we continue to see those names actually get propped up. They continue to make higher highs more so, and they've actually been showing the ones showing more relative strength despite when the market's actually been red. All right. But this is a beautiful one. I like Meta for some further upside here. I do believe you're going to get close enough towards completing that gap fill at the very least. In which case, we're going to end up pushing that 50-day EMA at 126.33. So let's just see how aggressive it gets once we get to the end stage of this rally. Whether it be a one-day wonder or not, maybe we get close enough to double-digit gains on Meta. As we get to that end stage of the rally, it'll just be left to be seen how close we get towards filling that gap fill. All right. So that's another one. You did mention Rivian. Let's take a peep at Rivian. Let's see what's going on with Rivian here right now. Rivian doesn't look that bad. I don't think the chart relatively says or screams that it's getting any kind of meaningful reversal just yet. You attempted to break north over that 100-day EMA, but you ended up pulling right back down below it, which gives me the indication that it was a failed attempt of a breakout. So until you can end up reclaiming over 35.25 and then breaking over the high of yesterday over 35.74, I don't anticipate that you're going to get that kind of upside that you're looking for, Jose. Thomas. So I would say relatively look to actually break over that high from yesterday and look for the continuation because right now it's a failed breakout attempt over that 100-day EMA. In which case, if you actually see relatively to your past price action, you failed breakout over the 100-day EMA dating back to August 12th. You ended up breaking, but broke right back down below that 100-day EMA. Yet again, you attempted a failed breakout over the 100-day EMA on October 6th, and then another failed breakover on November 1st. So this has failed to break over that 100-day EMA multiple times for Rivian. So I would definitely have to see this push north over 36 rather heavily. Once you break over 36, your level of resistance I would be targeting here is up towards 39, and that's when you can get into some calls. All right, and you'll likely see a bigger breakout. Otherwise, right now, I don't particularly feel safe. If you wanted to get into relative support and then look to see if you can retest that breakout yet again, your support I'd be watching for is sitting down close enough to that $33 mark where you're going to end up coming back down towards the 50 and rather confluence with the 20 EMA down at that $33 mark. That's where I would say you look for a potential buy the dip type of opportunity on Rivian, and then you could potentially look to place it right back up to the 100 EMA, retest the breakout, but then at that given point, now you know, okay, if it fails to break out, I can just pretty much walk away. All right. That's how I would more so look to play that. Let's see. You mentioned Rumble and you're regarding earnings. All right. Let's take a look at Rumble. See what's going on with her. All right. So it is relatively red this morning. A nice little curl down. I don't necessarily like the rounding top action that's taking place off of the daily here for Rumble. I will say that. But if you're looking for the upside here, and if I'm looking to pretty much look for the breakout or the reversal more so, look to see if this can break over that $12 mark. You're looking for the breakout. Over 11.96 is that level that you're watching. Over 11.96, then you're going to start to flirt with the breakout, which would then take place over 12 half. All right. So I would look for that over 11.96. That's ideally the level that I would look for it to break over, and then confirm breakout over 12 half is what I would be watching for the upside. Otherwise, as you saw that you basically attempted a breakdown off of this curling top action on the daily, if this ends up progressing right back down under that $11 mark, under 11.97, then that's going to pretty much give you a lower low off of yesterday's price action. All right, but that's basically as simple as I can put it for you. Let's see what else there is that you guys are speaking about. Tyler, good morning, by the way. Can I take a look at Oxy? Do I think there's more room to run? Let's take a peep at Oxy. Let's see what's going on with her. So she is regressing this morning off of, I want to say it's starting to get a little more aggressive for NASDAQ here off of this morning dump. But in terms of price action that I'm watching here for Oxy, I would be watching to reclaim over 75. If you can reclaim over 75, then I believe that you are going to attempt to end up filling this wick fill from August 29th. That's where I would particularly say is that you're looking to break over that 77.13 mark. So here's ideally what I would say if you're looking to play the upside for the room to run here. If you can get in over the break of 75, then you basically risk the fact of either a double top at 77.13 and you look to exit your position if you get the rejection off of 77.13, or otherwise you look to get partial your profits pushing into that high at 77.13 and then basically leave the other half of your position looking for the breakout towards that new high. That's ideally how I would go about playing it. Do I want to say that you particularly want to try and just get in even off of support here? No, I don't particularly say that I would ideally want to get into support right around this level. If I were to say maybe the risk to reward potentially, you would look to get in as close as possible towards that 20-day EMA, down retesting towards 71.66, and then pretty much have a relative tight stop loss. And I would probably set it towards that gap fill that you have sitting here. below 71.05, you of course you don't want to end up getting caught in the gap fill. So have that 71.05 as your stop out, and you get in as close to 71.66 as the support test of the 20-day EMA. All right, that's how I would go about playing it if you're looking to play it off of support. If we get some further regression off of that little morning pullback, but on the flip side, if you're looking to play the breakout, if we get a nice little pop out of the gate here, and relatively energy ends up being our strong point, our relative strength here, with Nasdaq pulling back, then I will look for the breakout over 75, look to get into a position there, and then risk the attempt of either a double top or breaking out towards a new high over the 77.13. That would be the two different ways I would look to play. All right, that's either the fact, given the fact that we get a pullback, or do we just get a nice little recovery here off of morning price action and we attempt a breakout. All right, and that's pretty much the best way I can pretty much give you the best ways to play it. All right. So hopefully that kind of answered your question there, Tyler. But do I believe it has more room to run overall? Yes, I do. I believe there's actually resistance towards 80 half is what I'm looking at. So I believe that's going to particularly be where your overall uptrend is likely going to be tested for some pretty major resistance once we get up towards 80 half. All right. Other than that, though, I don't believe there's too much else that I have in the tank that I have that's on my radar as much. I did mention, I think I kind of covered NVIDIA yesterday, but just the fact that, of course, I mentioned that they have earnings. I was actually going to be watching for a pullback. I believe this can pull back down as far as 158 here today. I'd be a little bit more concerned if it ended up pulling back below 158, but 158 support should end up being tested this morning. If we pull back even further than that, then we pull back into what I have actually was a prior supply zone, is what I had previously, and that would now act as potentially a demand sitting down towards between 152 to 154 half is what I'm looking at. So that's why I would say if we end up falling below 158, that takes us right down into that zone. And that could also be confluence with your 100-day EMA down at 151.37 if we get any kind of aggressive selling to the downside here. As we already see, it's regressing down about 3% pre-market. All right. But do I ultimately expect this to pretty much recover off of earnings? I absolutely do. And I believe this is more so the catalyst to pretty much finish our market rally towards the end of the week here. All right, that's more so what I'm gearing towards. Do I say that you should hold calls banking on the fact that Nvidia is going to be the reason the market gaps up overnight? I would absolutely not tell you to do anything like that because then, of course, there's a lot of risk involved. But given the fact that we've seen a lot of times, more than not, where the market ends up kind of leaving you out of the overall price action, no, the price action you want to be a part of, yeah, I can see Nvidia being the reason why we end up gapping up, and then more so than not, we'll likely all miss the bigger move that we all potentially want, and it's not gonna end up happening intraday. All right, that's more so my gut feeling right now. Just looking at how where we're sitting, knowing the fact that we're getting close enough towards resistance, towards ending this little miniature bear market rally. That's more so the only way I can think about how the casino can basically win, and then more so all of us missing the price action. All right. But that was your opening bell right there, guys. I am going to go ahead and leave the stream up for SPY. So that way, of course, you guys can pretty much see my levels, see the EMAs. Look to see how that's pretty much playing out as we get a little morning dip. But other than that, I think that's pretty much a wrap for me. All right. I will leave you guys with that. Any kind of questions here within the next few minutes here, drop in the chat, and I'll be able to pretty much respond to you guys. All right. But other than that, everyone have a great trading day. All right.